Okay, interesting. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. Today will be not the average calls that we've been having. Today, we wanted to go a little bit more personal so that people can, dig into the lives of people that have been through the journeys that you are going through right now, see how they dealt with every little part of the journey, and then be able to pull some sort of strength from that. Let me quickly introduce the two panelists that I have here. The first person I'll introduce is no other, Tunde Oke. Tunde Oke is Fuqua 2017, a great guy, a longtime friend, and I know that I've helped a lot of people. It's going into the hundreds now that I've helped overturn their visa denials. But what many people do not know is that my own story actually started with Tunde, and Tunde helped me when I was getting into Duke, and when my visa denials was happening, he was the one who gave me all the support. So welcome here, Tunde. Let me give you one minute to quickly introduce yourself, and let's get started.
Thank you, Dio. Like Dio rightfully mentioned, my name is Tunde Oke, class of 2017 FIPA. Currently, I'm with Microsoft. I lead a couple of teams within Microsoft as the director of product. Before then, I've was with Dell, was with IBM straight after business school. So for all things product management, if you guys get into the programs and post the program, you want to talk about the product management, yeah, you can reach out to me. But yeah, happy for this conversation. Thanks, Larry, for the opportunity.
Sure. Thank you very much, Tunde. Funny how Tunde's story and my story is almost alike, because when I got into Fuqua, he was VP Technology, I was VP International. And you see the ball behind me, that's something that every Duke leader gets. I think he has one as well. Yeah. Interesting. So, and then when he left Fuqua, he went on to Dell. I went on to Dell as well. My personal life is not very known here in Literature Force space. And now that he's with Microsoft, I'm doing my thing with HP at this time. And we're still able to stay connected to ensure that we can lift a lot more people out of whatever they're going through. Our goal really is from the moment an African thinks about the NBA till they become a global leader, we want to see how we can solve all the problems in that value chain, right? And that's the reason why we're doing this today. There might be other things we could do together, but let's move on and quickly talk to the star of the moment, the first person that we're bringing into the series. There will be more of this series coming on so that you can learn how to navigate your own journeys as well. Let me introduce Victoria Porter. Victoria Porter just graduated UNC with her MBA. Congratulations, Victoria. And Victoria's journey started with me when a mutual friend reached out and said Victoria got into UNC in flying colors, and she's dealing with these issues in Lagos. And then I jumped on, and we did some work together. I wouldn't say I did all the work, but myself and her, we did all the work together. And today she has graduated, and she'll be here to share every little detail about her story so that you guys can see where the hope is and how to navigate. But I'm going to give her a minute to quickly introduce herself, and then we can get started.
Hi, everyone. Just like Dio said, my name is Victoria. I haven't gotten used to being referred to as Porter just yet, but I think I'm getting there. I recently graduated like a couple of weeks ago, actually last week. And it's a really great feeling to, know this journey started like 2 years ago, leaving corporate finance in Nigeria and then coming to the US, interning with McKinsey, knowing that we're going back after the summer break to become a consultant. It's been a very funny, nice, sweet, bittersweet, I would say, transition up until this time. And I know some people are also going through that process and phase right now. But I'd like you to see me in this process as, somebody who is going through around the same things that you went through and sort of like understands what's the downsides or upsides to this process can be. And I'm happy to be here to share my story, experience, how Diane and I worked together to get me into the US and sort of like transitioning through business school and rounding up. So I'm happy to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much, Victoria. So we're going to get started to ensure that, we manage your time properly. I'm going to let Tunde go first to just start throwing questions. Just find one question and throw to Victoria. And Victoria also promises to be as real as possible. And then so that people can really, really see in between the lines. Because one of the problems that we're facing is that when people get visa rejection, it's a time when you are very vulnerable. And there are many people out there, many organizations out there who take advantage of that and just take your money because you're desperate, and now you are, double down if there's anything like that. So Tunde, please go ahead and shoot your first question.
Great. Victoria, thanks for jumping on. So you mentioned that prior to you coming to the US for your MBA, you worked in corporate finance, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I really want to understand is what actually then motivated you to say, okay, MBA, I want to go do MBA, right? And that's the first question. It's a two part question. That's the first one. The second one is, now that you have decided, okay, I want to do an MBA, why UNC?
So I think for me it's the corporate finance part. I've done it across like two industries, the telco space and then very briefly tech, and then the CPG space as well. One thing I realized, and my personality is, I would say, pretty linked to this, is when you're in corporate finance, you get seen as the enabler. So I would attend like multiple, and this might be very petty, but I would attend multiple award sessions, and only the sales guys are getting awards, the sales and marketing guys. And I'm like, what are they doing? Like, if I'm not here, these guys can't do anything. Like, they can't record sales, they can't do any of that stuff. But then we get called the enablers, and we're not the real revenue generators. And I'm like, okay, I think it's time to start thinking about a role where I feel like I'm actually making impact, where I can see the tangibility of my efforts to say that, oh yeah, I was responsible for doing this stuff, doing that stuff at the firm, and I can actually like put numbers to it. Even though in the finance role, you're still able to do things like that. But you know how they say, if you're not the one generating the goals, you are just like part of the people, like just tilling the ground and stuff like that. And so that was really my motivation from getting out of corporate finance and thinking towards consulting. Consulting was, is that kind of career path where they say you are like at the forefront with the clients, trying to help them like create lasting solutions to whatever problems they might bring to you. And so that was my motivation for consulting. One would say IB was like the clearest path for me because I come from corporate finance. But then I realized again that if you go into IB, once you've mastered all the models, and it's still basically around the same work frame, but just doing it across clients. But consulting, one day is never the same for you. You're working on different problems, different clients, different industries. And so it aligned more for me. And so as soon as I realized that I wanted to get out of that space and then go into consulting, the quickest way for me to do that was through an MBA. McKinsey, BCG, and the likes. I'd already had a brief stint with Deloitte, so I know I didn't want to do accounting advisory. I wanted to do more management consulting, tilting towards the strategy side of things. So it only made sense that McKinsey, EYP, and those would be the firms that I was looking at that point. And it was pretty hard to break into that space from being in corporate finance. Everyone tells you you're more suited for the big four accounting life and than management consulting, which is such a weird thing for people to say to you in Nigeria. And there'll be people that definitely say that to you. So when I started thinking about it, I figured getting an MBA would be the best thing. And so my husband was a bit very tied to this story as well. He went to Harvard, and so I reached out to say, would you mind helping me through this whole process? I wanted to apply. And this was me throwing a random LinkedIn message as well to him and a few other people who were in Ivy League schools. I sort of had the generic knowledge of what it meant to get an MBA, but didn't necessarily like know the nooks and cranny, like the essays. What should I be thinking about? Should I be doing GRE or GMAT? So in that space, I felt like I needed somebody to talk to just to give me like an idea of what might be the best routes to take towards getting the program. And thankfully, after I sent the first message, 2 months later, he responded with the, hi, hello, sorry, I missed. I was aired for 2 months. Can you believe that?
Your husband.
But eventually became your husband.
Right. So he eventually responded, and we sort of like had that first conversation about what it means to be doing an MBA, what that looks like for me, and all of that. So right at that point, we had this call March 2021. And so you could say from that day, I sort of always had him like a guiding light in my life towards like thinking through towards the MBA as well. And so that's how I started the process. UNC, I would tell you, was not in my range of schools at all. And people find that very hard to believe that I still ended up here. I really targeted the M7, like top 5 schools. That was where I was looking at. So my applications went to HBS, Stanford, Wharton. And the crazy part is I also limited myself a bit too as well. And this could be like an advice point to anyone else. I would say make your school range a bit wider. The funny thing is, for some weird reason, I did not notice Duke at all, which is so strange. It was after I had gotten my admission, I'm just like, how did I miss Duke? And I think I met people as well in Duke. And I'm just like, I should have been in Duke, not US.
Somebody's confessing live on TV.
And I met
UNC,
people.
look at this.
I mean, I love my UNC people, but at that point, I'm just like, how did I never think of Duke? And so UNC eventually happened second round. So I wrote the GRE first time, wasn't comfortable with my scores. And so I wrote it again. I applied to the schools, but didn't get into any of the schools that I applied to in round 1. So I had to try again in round 2. UNC came on my radar because they were giving me free application waiver. I mean, free application. I didn't have to pay for the application fees. And so I'm just like, okay, I will just try it as well. And trying it literally led to like this whole thing of, before I knew what was happening, my husband was also running up at business school at that time. He also got an offer in North Carolina and Charlotte. So everything just seemed like it was going in the way of UNC. I'd interviewed with McCombs, Simon, and a couple of other schools, and UNC was the one that gave me funding, the funding that I was looking for, gave me admission at that particular time. I think I was waitlisted in a couple of schools. And so since it was in North Carolina, my husband was going to be here as well. It was just going to be in Charlotte. It just seemed like everything was going in that direction. And I happened to find that one of my friends as well, we're very good friends, Dotson, who was very crucial in linking me up to Dio as well eventually, also was at UNC. And at that point, he was like, come to UNC, where, and for me, representation really mattered. Right. We are all, coming from this background where necessarily we don't really understand. We've only seen what we've seen on TV, but don't know how the system really works. And so we have to rely on people like us to tell us, hey, this is the experience we're going through here. You can make it, you can do this. And I think people like Dio, Dotun were the people that I've spoken to that made me feel like, and my husband as well, that made me feel like, well, if I can do this, then you also can do it. Right. And so that was my key motivation. I saw the representation there and I'm like, okay, I'll go with UNC. So I paid my acceptance fee, started the whole process of like, getting into that space. But I wouldn't say it was anything specific about UNC. It was more the people that helped me like make the decision to say that I was coming to UNC.
Which is really great. Thank you very much for that extensive explanation, right? The journey is something that you should plan from the start. You should have people that would show you around, because a few data points as well will be necessary as you get towards your.
Exactly.
So let me just begin to connect it to the visas now, because most of the people here, beginning to think about, the visas. So there are some data points at the point when you are choosing school that will matter when you're applying for a visa. But because people don't have that leadership and that people that can tell their stories, it now makes it hard for them to, navigate the process. A good example is, one school is giving you full ride, and it's not a bad school, but there's a school that is higher in the ranking that is giving you something that leaves you with a deficit of like 70K. When you get to the visa interview, you will have to explain how to pay that 70K. That's some extra hurdle for you, you know. And I wish people can really, really see that far at the time when they are picking those things, you know. But there are other things that, other data points that we will look at. But for now, my next question to you is to jump straight into the visa process, right? Tell us your experience when you first applied for your F1 visa. You know, how was it? Where did you apply? And also, let us know how being in a group influenced some of the wrong decisions that you could have made, right?
So the first time I applied for my visa, to be honest, I just did it with my husband. I didn't ask anybody. You know how we Nigerians are usually like, we cannot tell anybody we're going to embassy. We cannot do it. So you keep everything to yourself, and you forget that sometimes that it's way better to ask and hear somebody's perspective and be like, so to be honest, we were all, I mean, we'd already had I did round 2. So there were other people that had gotten in round 1, etc., and that already gone through the visa process. So I would say to some extent, I probably did ask some questions to be like, hey, what was your experience like? But I think I focused that question more on Dotun than even like the other classmates who were on the group as well. And mainly because a lot of us at that point are still trying to navigate. You've not met these people face to face before. You've only met them on like a group chat setting. And so sometimes people are not comfortable with telling you all their life stories, how their experience went, and things like that. And then we also had this MBA 24 group as well that people were throwing in their visa stories and all of that stuff. Here's, I got rejected, I got approved, etc. So in thinking all of that, my first date was May 31st, 2022. And it's a very funny thing that I remember it clearly because that day I chopped a very hot rejection. So it's a very crucial day in my life. So I still remember it very well. Up until that time, I'm like, I have everything sorted. I'm going to a top 20 school. I got funding. I didn't think about things like how your GRE score, you might want to add that in your story. How your grades in undergrad, you can use that to tell a story as well. How you maybe are thinking about consulting and this school is really known for consulting. Things like that. I didn't think about mapping them into my story. My head was, these guys are visa officers. They know all the schools that exist in the US. And so if I tell them I'm going to UNC, they should see me as a star, that I'm even coming to their country and all of that stuff. Oh boy, it was not like that though. It was just not like that. I got into the whole process, filled out my DS 160, and I would say that I had gotten a rejection, and I think this is also very crucial to note as well. I'd gotten a rejection for B1, B2 sometime in 2017. I would even say at that time, my reasons for wanting to, I had just lost my mom at that time. So my head was in a lot of places. And so I didn't really prepare for that interview. I just felt, it's US visa, like how hard can it be at that point? And so I went for the B1 visa. Evidently and obviously I didn't get it. And so putting that into my story as well was very important, especially when filling out the DS 160. Any lies, fabrications, things that are not true, it just renders you like incapable of doing anything with the US eventually, because it's a trust-based system, and if they feel like once you do one tiny thing that puts a red flag to say this person cannot be trusted, you sort of like put a red flag on every single thing you eventually do with the US. And I came to realize that very quickly through advice from other people as well. And so I did my first application, put in a flimsy reason for why I was denied my first B1, B2, that I don't think that the officer did not let me speak. I did not ask me reasons. So that's how I sort of like framed it in the application. And I just sent in my DS 160 and was getting ready for my May 31st interview. I would say again, prior to this time, the only person I think I spoke to was Dotson. My husband wasn't really much help because he went to school around the time COVID was just like settling in, and Harvard had sent this letter to the embassy already. So he got like a swift interview. His process was pretty seamless and he didn't have to go through that whole stress of looking for this like we did. And so that also plays in the part of what school you are going to, how they have mouth reach and how they don't have mouth reach, and whether they can talk to the embassy on your behalf. My school did not have mouth like that. So I had to wait, hustle for dates and things like that. And so eventually when I got to the embassy now, I went there with, and I remember I went there that day looking all nicely dressed, put my ID card on my neck to show that I'm working with Airtel. Went there feeling really, really confident. And when we got, the long line and everything, and we were just on the line, in my head, people were already chopping rejection from the front. You know how you barely spoken for 2 minutes and somebody has already given you blue paper. It's sorry, we cannot approve your visa. Only like very few people were getting their visas that day and getting the white paper. And in my head, I was like, I definitely would be part of these people getting the white paper. And I got to the line, it got to my turn, and the woman asked me, hi, what are you going to do in the US? I'm like, oh, I'm going to attend UNC Ken Flagler Business School to get my MBA. And she was like, okay, how are you funding this? And I'm like, I got a scholarship. I'll be funding the rest with student loans, etc. I also started recruiting with McKinsey and Company, and I'm sure I'm gonna. And then the woman asked me, what's McKinsey? I said, God. It was at that point I knew that I was in trouble. She literally asked me, what is McKinsey? And my thinking was, and I think I went in with a mindset that every single person at that visa office is educated to a certain point. They know stuff, they know. I was proven very wrong because if somebody doesn't know McKinsey and she was like, spell it. I'm like, okay. Spelled it out to her. She looked at it and probably didn't even understand what she was seeing. And after that, she just said, I cannot approve your visa this time. Take a blue. And at that point, I just stood there like 1 second. I was stunned. And I was telling to ask why, but I knew there was no point asking why. She just gave me back my passport. And I just walked away. In that same vein, a friend from Duke also had already gotten her denial. Another person behind, I think right before me from Yale as well, had already gotten denied. And I think one thing that was similar to all three of us was that we went there with a confidence, not enough stats to back up what we wanted to do. And we just went there because we thought the names of our schools would make all the difference and it would matter and that I would be the end. But we're proven very wrongly and that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, just to clear it, that during COVID, it was a different time, right? So there are a few rules that were not the normal rules. That's the reason why Harvard could have, done something maybe to prove that we're actually going to accept students, then you can go ahead and interview them. And the biggest mistake that we make as well is we think that our school is so big that we won't have to say much, right? But the visa officer doesn't care about that, number one. The visa officer does not know certain things. I think the biggest red flag in your first interview was mentioning McKinsey, because the visa officer their job is to be convinced that you will return to your country. But the fact that you already said you are recruiting with McKinsey was a red flag for them, right? And that's majorly what started the rejection. Also, that confidence that you go there thinking your school is everything. Remember that the visa officers are regular people. Some of them didn't go to top schools. You never know. There are some unwritten and unsaid. If I was a visa officer and I've maybe tried to get into Duke, for example, and I did not get in, and then you come just trying to raise your shoulders or whatnot, yeah, I'm not gonna have that, right? So these guys are psychologists as well. They're just checking. They don't have to know everything. This is a great example to show that everybody must go into their visa interviews with strategies and be very clear around how your story will connect you back to your home country to return. I'm going to let Tunde go ahead and ask the next question. We have a whole load of questions to ask. I'm going to try to rush through them to ensure that, we manage the time properly. Tunde?
Yeah, just before I get into the next question, I just wanted to say that it is all very important, right? That we approach this process with a lot of, caution, right? What Victoria said about, thinking maybe my school, they should know my school. So it could have worked with some other visa officer, right? It could have, but you don't want to just assume that everybody would, So it's better to be cautious and just, go there, like you mentioned, with facts, with the actual story, than saying that, because my school is a top school, they should just let me,
They should know.
they should know, right?
You're going to Duke and you just go and do that to a visa officer that is a UNC fan.
Exactly. Because I'll give an instance. In my own case, even though it's pretty long ago, right? It actually worked in my favor that I was going to Duke. Because the person said, "Oh, you're going to Duke. You must be a smart person," And say, "Oh, do you know that because that person is actually informed because he even gave me statistics that is it about maybe X% of people that get into that school, so you must be really, really smart, So it could work if if the audience, the person you're actually talking to, is knowledgeable and does not have any form of bias.
Yeah.
But averagely, they'll look like people in my country say cannot even go to school. You are going to do
Yeah.
you are going to do. So it could have it could have backfired as well. Like, what do you think you are, right? You from Nigeria going to,
I also want to chip in that when you went to MBA, it was in 1960s, right? At that time, we didn't have this much traction.
Exactly.
Nigerians trying to go.
I agree.
So coming out there saying you're going to Duke can work for you, right? Right now, the Nigerian government indirectly is advertising for people to. So a lot more people are applying to MBA programs. And I'll be honest with you, this might be something tough for us to deal with. But if we understand the truth and see things from the visa officer's perspective, then you will be able to get it. Some people in this journey are actually not people that should be in this journey. They're not smart enough.
Absolutely agree.
Somebody probably helped them through a lot of stuff. And then when they are coached in a certain manner, they go to the visa officer and they sound like they've crammed everything. The visa officer can see through. And that, kind of like they use that brush on everyone, right? Okay, this is what is going on. This is a new trend. It's not only smart people that are now going to these schools. Don't forget that they also live in Nigeria. They are also facing the same shege that we are facing, right? So it's very helpful to have that context that now you need to be very, very clear and articulate and separate yourself from those that are all just doing let my people go.
Yeah.
Just wanted to put in that context.
Good echo there, because true, back when I did my own MBA, like a year before mine in Afikwa, it was just one Nigerian, like just one person. My class was just 3 of us, right? And now there is a load of folks right? So at the time, we just few people actually going there for MBA. So you're right, 100%. So,
absolutely agree.
My class was 9, so, and now the guys in the first year, they're what, about maybe 15 to 16. So it keeps growing. Officers are seeing that trend. And they're trying to, understand what's going on. Let me just quickly mention as well, like I always mention to people, being in groups, class of 24, class of 25, class of 26 is a good thing and can be a bad thing as well. Because when somebody shares their story on the group, it has an effect on everybody.
Yeah.
When all of you go for a session together and you get tips, everybody's brushed with the same brush. So somehow when you go for your interviews, everybody is sounding alike to the visa officer. If you're the one sitting down interviewing people, you can connect the dots, right? So it's looking like these people have been coached and everybody is just, So usually you should look for a way to ensure that you are not going with the same strategy that everybody is going with. Be original. Secondly is not everybody will share the real story of their denial. Everybody wants to share something that makes them look bad to a group. So the real stories may not be things that you see in that transcript that everybody is sharing. Somebody who has gone and they've seen a red flag because you had said something funny that you know about bombs because you're a chemical engineer and you got denied, you will now come back and put a transcript in the group and say, oh, the moment I mentioned my loan from Prodigy, they just changed. That has a ripple effect on everybody on the group. Now everybody goes and starts scattering everything that they have arranged properly. So with the groups, you got to be careful, right? Is it this or that? I'm going to let Tunde go ahead and shoot his next question.
Yeah, thanks, Ayo. So with the denial, Victoria, I want to assume that it is still on you, right? So how did you, navigate that denial process? How long did it take you for you to recover and they say, you know what, I want to go back and try again? What did that process look like? Did you have people around you to help you through that process as well? Just wanted you to share more light on that.
The funny thing after and this is, I absolutely resonate a lot with what Daya said about groups. Groups are great in terms of you see what other people are going through. You try to avoid some of the pitfalls that other people make, but it's not helpful in crafting your story. Your story should be unique to you, your circumstance, and what it is you're going to do in the US. The minute you start to do groupthink, it's evident to the visa officers. And I think I fell prey to that during my first interview. I wanted to sound a lot like the people that had already gone successfully. And so that was how I was crafting my story as well. And so after I got denied, my sister was waiting for me outside that day. And I just carried my paper, my blue paper, and I was just walking outside. You know how those soldiers are always standing outside. They'll not be like, yeah, sorry. The minute they will say sorry, just it made me some more. I just said thank you and I just carried myself. And the crazy part was I didn't know how, I was so stunned at that point because I went there with so much confidence that I'm definitely coming back home with my visa. I prayed overnight. Like I done it all in my own head and thought that I was going to have like the perfect outcome. But that wasn't the case. And we humans, how we deal with rejection. And so I went there. I just left the office, my blue paper, I went to go and meet my sister outside. My sister, the minute my sister saw my face, she already knew that this is not positive news. And me and my friend, funny enough, we won't came outside together, Helen, and we're just like, what just happened right now? Like we're just still in disbelief about what had happened. And so when we got outside, we just carried and we booked an Uber and we left. And my sister had to go to work, and so it was just me at home. And at that point, and this is something I would recommend as well, try to avoid that wallowing. It can be very, this can be a journey of 1 year. Like writing your GRE, waiting for the right times for applications, recommenders. It's literally a journey of 1 year till you put in that final application in. And your journey of 1 year in 2 minutes, in less than 2 minutes even, it's all poof in the air because somebody can't resonate with how hard you worked and the journey of how much you have come through to this point. And so that can be a very devastating thing for us human beings. That same day, my husband was in the US at the time. I called him, babe, they did not give me visa. For some weird reason, we just started fighting. Why are we fighting? We don't even know why we're fighting. We were both just destabilized at that point, and we're not even listening. We just had a very bad day, and we had this really huge fight that day as a result of how we're trying to understand and process what had just happened. And at that point, there was something on your CGI profile that tells you, if you applied in the past 6 months, don't apply again. Need to see that. So you will not, once you put that have you applied in the past 6 months, and you tick yes, you don't see any dates, you can't even book another appointment at that point. So I'm like, is this how the journey of 1 year is going to end with no results, nothing, etc. like that? And I went back home and I was just devastated. At that day, I didn't cry at first. It was when I was now alone the next day. I now realized that, hey, this is what happened to me. They did not give me a visa, true. How am I going to? And I burst into tears that day. I was just crying on my bed. I couldn't work. And you know the crazy part again with work, you have your mind has totally like cut off from work in Nigeria, like it or not, because you are working towards a goal in your own head that I'm going to the US at this particular time, etc. And so your mind is no longer on work as it should be. You are distracted with the whole visa thing. And with the way hours even work, you have to be on your laptop 700 hours a day looking for dates and knowing when people are saying there's date available, quickly rush and things like that. And so all of that work, at that point, the emotion started weighing on me that's like this just went down the drain. And so for weeks, I couldn't do anything. I was barely there at work. My emotions were just all over the place. My husband was trying to, say, calm down, we'll figure it out, etc. But even he didn't know what to do because at that point, he wasn't knowledgeable enough to say, let's go apply again or something like that. And even I didn't know I could apply again because I just saw the CGI thing and said that's the end. Thankfully, I opened up to Dotun and Dotun was like, let me introduce you to somebody that would know. Let me introduce you to somebody. And this is already like, it was May 31st. This was like maybe third week in June already. And so Dotun introduces me to Dio. And Dio was like, Dio, this what happened to me. Oh, I don't know what I will do in my life. School is remains so and so. I don't have visa. I don't know what. At that point, what I needed was somebody who would say, don't worry, we'll figure it out. Let's find a way, like what happens, share with me your transcripts. Let's see how we can start again. Yeah. And I didn't know that I could be using all that time that I was using to wallow in self-pity and like doubt, not knowing what to do with myself, that I could be using to look for dates. I didn't know that people had even like those that got rejection the same day that I did, they'd already looked for another day, they already even gotten their visa on the second time. I didn't know any of that. So I just stayed in my zone, wasn't asking questions, wasn't really talking to anybody because I wasn't just sure what to do next. And so I eventually reached out to Dio. Dio sort of said, okay, let's figure this out. First off, you are wrong to not be looking for a date. And this was already like first week in June. I had to resume school for July 27 for orientation. And so I knew I'd already wasted 1 month, not looking for a date, not looking for anything. So I picked up date search, paid for another visa fee, picked up date search. It was even there I knew that we could, look for 2 locations as well. And at that point, the advice was don't go back to Lagos at this point. See whether we can do Abuja. And so I started looking for Abuja dates. Abuja dates were pretty rare at that time too. And sort of, it was already looking so difficult. And so another great advice Dio gave me, no, I'm not hyping you at this point, but it was, he shared a story with me as well, right? And I think that's extremely important when you're going through this journey. You know that there are people that have gone through this probably even harder than you have. It was just 1 rejection that I had. There's somebody that I know that's gotten like 4 rejections already right now. And so in my own head, I'm like, oh my God, this has to be the worst thing happening to me. But then you have to realize that there are other people that have gone 4 times already that didn't get a visa. And they probably even go into better schools and have better stories than you. And so hearing his story sort of like rekindled a bit of hope in me that, okay, just maybe I can do this thing again. And so we developed like an action plan. The action plan was, we need to redraft your story. We need to, is there any additional funding you could add and all of that stuff from personal like funds and everything just to redo the I-20? We did that. We spoke to ex-visa officers at that point to hear like what would they say, like what is it about my story that is not like resonating with these people. And the funny part about the McKinsey thing was I didn't say McKinsey US. In my head, I said McKinsey Lagos, that I was coming back to work with McKinsey Lagos. And this is just anybody that you might be telling a pretty solid story and it still doesn't resonate with the person you're speaking to. I told them I started recruiting with McKinsey Lagos. And at that time, it should be told I'd already started like talking to the firm in Lagos because I wasn't sure that I was going to go to school again that year. So I started speaking to them, but I hadn't like done anything formal. I just had coffee chats. And so I felt I should reference that in my first interview. Another crazy thing is these people write every single thing you are saying down. So whatever it is you leave out in one story, they will reference it in your second time you go for an interview. And I'm coming there. And so at that point, so when I was searching for dates on the side, Daya was helping me craft the story. Another great advice Daya gave was, can we look at other locations as well? In my head, I'm like, no, US must be where I'm going to etc. But then I remember the real reason why I wanted to get an MBA. Again, for me, it wasn't just because I wanted, it's amazing that I get to stay with my husband as well and all of that, but that wasn't the real reason why I wanted to get an MBA. Why I wanted to get an MBA was to like further my career and like change career paths. And I had to remember clearly that even though I don't get US, which is like my preferred location, that if I go to London or maybe another country, I just might have the same outcome. And so at that point, I was like, let's look into schools in the UK. Let's look at Canada as well. I didn't like the advice because in my head, I'm like, are you telling me to give up on the US already when I'm saying that the US is where I want to do or die? And so, but at that point, when I look back in retrospect, I'm like, this was probably the best advice he gave because the whole point of it wasn't to say give up on your US dreams. The goal was diversify your portfolio. We're accountants and finance people here. Diversify the portfolio so that your risk is, balanced. And so at that point, it was saying, even if the US for some reason doesn't work out, you have the UK to fall back on if you say you must leave Nigeria this year. Even if you say you're not leaving Nigeria, the fact that you have those other admissions can be helpful in your story as well when you go back to the visa office. And so eventually I started thinking about it. And so I put in my Imperial application, got one of my friends from City then to do my referral to do me a recommendation for Imperial as well. When I got the invitation to interview with Imperial, I was so happy. And at that time, I forgot my immediate sorrows with the US, which I think is really the goal of having you think of other locations. It's to help you say, even if the US is in my, but remember that you're still wanted somewhere, somebody is still, just, it puts your mind in, you are able to focus on like multiple things at once. And so like I continued with that process, got feedback from it. I think Imperial was the only one I applied to in the UK, and I got feedback from them that they wanted to interview me and all. So I sort of already scheduled that interview down and was prepping towards it while prepping towards my visa interview for US as well. The next thing that then happened that we did was we went to the Senate in the US. One of the amazing things about America as well, you can reach out to anybody. So Daya gave me that advice. Hey, look at the who are the congressmen in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, precisely, etc. We should do an email to contact them and all of that stuff. And so we did all of those things. And the crazy part is we're getting good responses back. They asked, give me your I-20.
let me just jump in here. Let me pause you for a second and clarify a few things so that people don't get it wrong. Okay, and before I forget. Now, even Victoria herself till now does not understand the reason why I told her some of the things, and I'll tell her now. First things first is that you need to be able to get out of that emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
So you need someone to tell you that, okay, it's going to work. Because getting your visa back, 80% of the work is psychological.
Yep.
So that's what I was doing. Secondly, when I was telling her to apply to other places and whatnot, it's also psychological because psychologically, a man that has options will speak confidently towards one of the options.
Yep.
Right? That's why so if she knows that she has things to back up on, her story can be strong and she can tell that story. Now, the congressional story is something that I want us to focus on carefully. She will continue her story, but I want us to focus on it carefully because when I started introducing people to this route, we're doing things properly. People were asking questions, we're hand-holding them. Some people just hear a little bit of it and they take off and go and do things the wrong way. Now, the problem that they don't see is if you plan the wrong way and you have the wrong details or anything is wrong with your application, you take it to the highest office, it magnifies your flaws.
Yeah.
So you getting it is even harder. And the reason why we go to Congress is because the visa officers don't respond to anybody.
Yep, they do not.
They have the final say on every case. The law says that nobody can overturn their decision. That means that even the president of the United States cannot overturn the decision. The only thing you can think about logically is who gave them that power. Congress made the law, so Congress can question it. And this congressional inquiry is not for foreigners, it's for citizens.
Mm.
Works is that as a citizen, you can reach out to your congressional representation in your constituency to fight against any government agency.
Mm.
That's the way it's meant to be. But, you know, again, that's not something that we really do a lot in Nigeria. It's a different story. That's what it's supposed to be. But now, because it's for citizens, I see, like, I'm not a lawyer. Anyone who's a lawyer here can, quote me right. Now, the school you are going to is a corporate citizen. Now, so corporate entities are also seen as citizens, right? So the way you are using that is like, for example, UNC will be losing revenue and the type of class profile that they would get if they don't let Vicky through. So the congressional rep will be reaching out based on that. I'm not a lawyer, but it's something close to that, right? But then some Nigerians have heard that, and people in the NBA community have started using it for their friends and family that are applying for B1, B2. Again, that's some of the problem that some of us will be facing. Now we've started watering down the effect of that congressional inquiry, because even in those offices, once they see Nigeria, you know, they really don't want to help because people have really messed a lot of things up. Also, the school that you are going to, if the congressional rep is in a party that supports immigration, they're more likely to respond to you. If the congressional rep is in a party that does not support immigration, they're less likely to reply to you. That's the reason why all of these strategies should be with you at the time that you're picking schools, to say, in case this happens, in case that happens. I remember putting this in a group one time like that, saying, look, are we now going to be picking schools based on political parties? And some people that didn't really understand the nitty-gritty were going off on me. But I knew what I was saying, right? Anyway, this is, I just wanted to give that quick heads up. And this is what it's about. And then for Vicky to go on. I'm not sure why this, this thing is counting down, but it's still going to go on even if we go over time. So Vicky, please go ahead.
Yeah, and so that whole process, they responded to say, oh, send me your I-20 etc. Just like Dio said, nobody overturns the decision of the visa officer. They empower them to be able to make that decision. So undermining it doesn't make sense for the US, and it doesn't make sense for any, organization that wants to be respected. And so the goal in my head wasn't that they would overturn the decision. The most important thing is that the goal was to make me feel like I was in a better position for somebody to hear my story. It wasn't for them to say that, oh, the way we think in Nigeria, that once you're already linked up with a government official, they would just, say, put this person in this position. That was not the case. And going in with that mindset with the American government is pretty weird, because from everything we've seen, that's just not how it works. So the goal was to even afford me that opportunity to say that, let's hear this person out. It was for the fact that, something is going to, whether anything, however they want to do it, will be on my application to say, hear this person out. Now, I didn't know exactly what they were doing. And in the end, I didn't end up needing it because everything just went pretty fast. So I don't know whether things would have been different or not different, because in the process of doing all of that, like play, it was already July ending already. And one day I sat in the I sat in so I'd already applied for the emergency dates thing that we usually do. And the first one was denied. But for some reason, the stuff did not leave my CGI portal to say that I didn't have access to it anymore. It still remained on my CGI portal, which I think is a glitch or something. But it remained on my CGI portal. So I still had access to apply for another emergency dates. And one of those days, and this was sometime in, I think this was July 21-ish or 22. Somebody then put on the groups again to say that my EA just got approved. July 27 dates ECC are available at Abuja and all of that stuff. So I put in and I like to say my journey is a journey of grace as well. I don't take credit. I'm just like, has to be God that did all the things he did, because it was a miracle of some sort. So July 22, somebody just posted on the group that, hey, there's Abuja dates for July 27 and August 4 for EA, for emergency. I'm like, I don't have emergency, but let me just put in the application again, since I still had the trial. And I put it in. And the next day, which was July 23rd, I get an email in the morning saying your EA has been approved. Go in now, select a date. This was me not even looking for. I had appointments. The actual appointment I had was for August, I think 8th or so, which was after resumption. And school had already said if I'm not in class by August 4th, that I should not bother coming. I should just like defer my admission. So I had I had August 4. And so I knew August 4 wasn't going to work, because how do I explain that? Oh, by the visa just got approved, etc. and all of that. So July 27 was like the best date. And so once I got the EE has been approved thing, I ran in quickly and saw that July 27 was the day that I had. And I think when I did this was it was actually July 26th, and I was in the office. I just got into the office that morning. I saw the approval email, and I'm like, I sign in. I see that July 27 is the only favorable date for me. I had to book it quickly. Told my office people that I had a family issue and I had to travel to Abuja immediately, etc. And so that same day, that morning, in the space of like those few hours, I booked a flight to Abuja for that same day, and booked a return flight for the next day. And my visa appointment was by, I think, 11 or so in the morning. And so I booked the dates and went for the visa interview. Now, what changed in my story? My visa interview, at this point, I did not do fine girl again. I did not do wasabi. I did not do it. I went there humbly with my no makeup face. Went there that they can see that this whole situation has already stressed my life. Went there with all the documents, everything that I needed. And this time, I'd already reached out to Dio to say, okay, how far I have this for so and so date. By the grace of God, I will explain later. And so this was, we, had mock interviews. There was also somebody I did another mock interview with, etc. And the most important thing that I could say that I learned that I did differently from when I got to my interview was, at this point, I didn't go there with any confidence or bragging to say that I'm going to this school or this. They asked me questions and I offered more information. That was also something that I did. I wasn't, unlike the other interview where it was, ask me, I'll answer. Ask me, I will answer. I ensured that there was no silent moments between me and the visa officer, right? So when she asked me, what are you going to do in ETC, all of that stuff, I'm like, I'm going to business school, all of that. This is this. While she was quiet, perusing through my application or whatever it is she was looking at that point, I just offered to say, can I tell you about my funding structure and how I intend to like fund my application? And she was like, yeah, go ahead. And so that's when I told her, with my GRE scores, my undergraduate degree of this, I was considered for a FETE fellowship that takes care of 67% of my school fees. My personal funds over the years, saving and being in the corporate space, allows me, cater for around $10,000 of my personal expense. And then the rest is covered by family loans. When my mom died, she left an educational fund for us, her children, and I'll be utilizing some of that, etc. And so I gave her that whole long story. already about how my funding was going to work, etc. And then a surprising thing then came. She was like, so you're going to go to McKinsey? I'm like, I hadn't mentioned anything about McKinsey in this interview. And then I just remembered quickly that McKinsey was mentioned in my first interview. And so most likely everything I said at that point was written down and like noted. And so I'm like, yes, I'm running an interview. I'm currently interviewing with McKinsey and Company. However, I'm still with Ethel Networks, and Ethel sort of like offered to fund a specific part in terms of like giving me living expenses to ensure that I come back to work for them. However, if McKinsey is more successful, I would most likely join McKinsey because I'm looking to pivot into consulting after my MBA. And she was like, so do you think you'd, and then it became like a gist session. She was like, do you think you'd accept McKinsey? I'm like, yeah, the money is much more. So I definitely would accept that. And we sort of just laughed about it. And she just went quiet for a bit and was typing on her system. And at this point, there was nothing else to say because I'd already answered all the questions. There was no more information to give or anything like that. And so I just waited. And she was like, okay, I'm going to approve your visa, took my passport. She had already collected my passport anyways, gave me the white paper, etc. It'd be ready for so and so. And that was it. And I think the real things that changed here for me was going there with a very genuine story, see how it's showing how it all mapped from my trajectory from the beginning of my career up until the points that I was at, and ensuring that I could articulate that very clearly without anybody asking me questions, using the results that I'd already got in terms of like my GRE, the places I worked, my undergrad stuff, the kind of scholarship I got. Before I used to think that was so much information, they can see it on my I-20, but tell them. And so those were the things that I did. I told them when they're with that confidence that I could do this, not shaking. Again, just like Dale said, these guys are like psychologists. By the time you start shaking, not maintaining eye contact, they're already thinking your stuff is not correct, you're not coming correct, or something like that. And so these were the things I avoided and ensured that when I went there the second time, I did better and the outcome was different.
Thank you. I'm going to let today jump on and ask you the next question, but I wanted to put a disclaimer here. Everyone remember that Victoria had this interview in 2022. Some of the things that she's saying now, it don't cast. It don't cast, right? The story, your story, what you should take away from her story is that your story must be original and you must not be sounding like everybody else. You must not show desperation. More importantly, all right, at that time, there was nobody that was really doing the things that she did now, saying, oh, can I tell you more about, but I have mentored people from 2022, 2023, and now 2024. That's a national anthem for many people. Okay. So
and they won't tell them, don't worry. Like they tell them, wait until I ask you a question.
exactly. So be genuine, be yourself. Everybody's story is unique. There must be a strategy for each person. What strategy worked for this person might not work for that person. So you need to look into your case and ensure that you're telling an original story. Let me hand over to Tunde to shoot the next question. I think
Yeah.
we're going to stop on top of the hour.
Yeah, I was going to say that maybe, I don't know what the Q&As are. If folks have specific follow-ups or questions, maybe we should first take that.
Yeah. So the questions that we've seen in the Q&A, people are just trying to sign up on a one-on-one, which is really tough. And I've responded that they should shoot us DMs. We'll see how to make that happen. I see Jesu Tofumi with his hand up. Maybe I should just let Jesu Tofumi ask his or her question. Go ahead, Jesu. Jesu.
Seriously.
Tofumi. Go ahead, Tofumi. If you're on mute,
you're muted.
And it can be an error that you raise your hand, so let us know.
It was a mistake.
It was a mistake. Okay.
You said it was a mistake.
So no problem. Let us move ahead with your question today.
So yeah, I think you've, generously shared your journey the challenges that you faced from your first interview, articulated what probably went wrong, how you handled the pressure, cope with the whole emotions, and how you went back in a more authentic and more real with your real self in the story. Now that you've gone through that, you got your passport, sorry, your visa, and you got your passport and everything. Can you walk us through that journey from that point in time to you actually got into, you traveled, you got into UNC, you started your program, and all the things that ensued afterwards?
And that's going to be 3 minutes.
All
Some
right.
questions for you.
Let's try that. I think my journey has been a very rewarding one. I came here with a specific goal in mind, and I had a very big supporter who helped me articulate what I wanted those goals to look like, and sort of like work through a clear pathway of getting them. A lot of us come here because, I'm like, I'm going to be as plain as possible. We come here because we want to make more money. We want to change our locations. That's really truly the primary reasons why we get MBAs. It's not because a lot of us, when you come to the program, you realize that you're even more qualified than your fellow classmates. You've done ICANN, you've done ACCA, you've done all the same, you've gotten all the other degrees, but you come to class and you realize there's a bigger goal in your own head. That goal is, I don't want to stay some way legally in the US and make enough money to sort of be able to cover these investments that I've taken to get the ROI you're looking for. And so that was my goal. And there was only 1, 2, or 2 ways I was going to do that. It was to get a good job at a firm. And for me, it wasn't just any firm. I think I had to be also, I agree with casting a very wide net as an international student. And to be honest, it's to your detriment if you don't cast a very wide net. You have to be flexible and willing to like play into whatever the curveballs of an MBA threw at you and know how to handle those. And so my options were recruit for corporate finance. I couldn't, there was no how to combine IB and consulting, recruiting for both of them at the same time. No, it was almost an impossible task. I didn't do the pre-MBA recruiting because, like I said, at that point, I was in a different space mentally because of the rejection of my visa. And so I wasn't even thinking about all those ones that I had gone so far already that all the deadlines had already passed. So I couldn't apply for any of those. But it was when I came to campus, I heard that a couple of my fellow colleagues in the program who were also coming from Nigeria had already they'd gotten their visa since, they'd applied for pre-MBA, they'd gotten interviews, some had gotten offers, some had at least fall interviews rescheduled. Me, I did not even have anyone. So I came into the MBA program knowing that I had my work cut out for me and that I had to focus on what my priorities were at that time and ensure that I go after it fully. And so that meant that I needed to make a quick choice about what it is I wanted to recruit for. And consulting and corporate finance were the 70% of my energy was on consulting and 30% was on corporate finance. Again, I come from a corporate finance background, so it wasn't really a big deal for me at that point. But consulting was what I didn't really have an idea of how to prepare for. And so I had to utilize all the career services, be that person. And this would be useful. This advice doesn't really change because it would be useful irrespective. We come from a culture where we are very comfortable with not speaking up about our achievements, the things we've done, the things we know, because we feel, oh, I have an accent. I'll sound different. Oh, I'll do that. It really doesn't matter in the end. Remember, the goal is, I want to make enough money to be successful and all of that. And if you don't put yourself out there, nobody will notice you. You will just be there and everything will pass you by. You won't get coffee chats. You won't do any of that. And so when I realized that everybody had interviews, I didn't have any interview. Whenever the companies come on campus, anytime they do Q&A, I'm always the first person to raise my hand in the room. I have a question. And at that point, it wasn't just asking questions that I could find on the internet. It was asking intelligent questions that people would then want to say, oh, this person actually wants to like engage with them more, etc. I remember when Kearney came on campus and I was like the first person to ask a question after they finished the interview. Then they gave me like this swag bag. I'm like, oh, nice. One of my it's yielded good results. And at that point, other people may not be doing the same thing that you're doing, but you have to realize that you're cut from a different cloth. Your goals are different. Things you want from life are different. You come from a different background entirely. You can't use your own story and say it's the same thing as an American citizen. They can decide to stay without work for 1 year. But you cannot try it for 1 month or 2 months as an international student. So things like that were things I kept in mind and was like, I need to focus on my goals. And as soon as I achieved what I wanted to achieve, the MBA then became an experience that I could enjoy, like go out, etc. and things like that. But prior to that, it was really focused on like achieving the goals I really wanted from the program at that point.
Beautiful. So I'm gonna say that this is a great story and I can resonate. My situation was worse because I landed the US the night before my first class. So I wasn't even thinking about interviews or whatnot, Let's get the visa first, right? And Tunde, great guy, he sent me a very interesting package. In my house, I just got the alert on my phone that I have a package. I went to check. I saw a box of Gary, Kuli Kuli, Chocomilo, everything like Baba, you don't suffer visa, whatever. Start with this one before you buy pots and all that. But oh, that was great. But look, I want to bring us back to why people are here
Mm-hmm.
and see how they can drive more value from this call. Let me tell you one of the biggest problems people have in this journey is not having information.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look at the dilemma that people get into. People are looking for how to deal with that ethical boundary, right? You're going to MBA, and I want you all to listen to this very clearly. This is something that drives people into depression, right? You're going for your MBA, you've gotten the admission, your company that you work for in Africa, because there are a lot of people here that are not Africans. And shout outs to everyone. We have close to 100 people here. That's nice. Um, Now, you're supposed to quit or give them notification of resignation, right? Maybe 3 months prior. Now, there's a dilemma there in the sense that, many people have done that. They've done that, they resigned. Now, the earning to expenditure ratio from Nigeria to the US is very different, right? So the $2,000 of down payment is a lot from your savings.
Mm-hmm.
So you have paid down payment, you have notified that you want to resign, and then you get rejected your visas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you get rejected, you are socially awkward, you don't want to hang out, you don't have a job, and you are broke.
Mm.
So it's a very difficult
Yeah.
situation to be in. And I just want people to know ahead. And how can we, I know that there's some people in this chat that are in that situation, because a lot of people have reached out to me as well. Now, as we try to help you out of this and see what we can do, it's on all of us to ensure that class of 27 does not fall into this trap as well, and they can
Yeah.
see ahead, right? Either you want to look for a way to renegotiate the deadline for paying your down payment, because why are you paying down payment? The
I
school
agree.
wants to be sure that you
Yeah,
will come to them, right? And you won't
I have no idea.
you will come to them and you won't go to any other school is a way to tie you down. And I'll tell you a secret. If a school gives you an offer and you turn it down, it affects their own ranking too.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they're very careful before giving you offers and being very sure about those on the wait list. Now, how can we ensure that class of 27 does not fall into this? Look at all the hard work we're doing. The only thing you have to do is go ahead and share these videos once we post it. Just like and share with your friends and let everybody know that this is what the situation is. There are many
Yeah.
people in this situation right now and it's a dilemma. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Also, I wanted to let you know as well that the schools don't really have a lot of power in this journey.
Yeah.
The thing they can do is to maybe give you extra funding. And when you get the extra funding, that one helps you show the visa officer that something has changed in my story. Because that's one of the most significant things that you can say has changed. right? Either they give you 5K more or 10K more. But at times, the school has also overstretched their budget. So now they don't have money anymore. And they also want to get their program started. So you will begin to see that not only are you broke, not only don't you have a job, not only have you been rejected visas, the school is also pushing you to defer. By the time you are deferring, many schools also have another fee to pay when you are deferring, right? To drop maybe 1,000 more or whatnot, right? So that you don't find yourself in that situation and others don't find themselves in that situation. It's great to ensure that what we're doing really makes it out there and people can really, really see what we're doing.
Yeah,
So
Dara, if I could say something very quickly, and I think you bring up very good points about like the resignation part of, and I think this is something I didn't talk about. So I didn't resign from Etel until I had my visa.
I'm not there. So I've not said that that's what you do, right? But just have it in mind that this is a situation that you can be in. How you navigate is yours. And Vicky was able to, maybe at Airtel, there are some things that you lose if you don't let them know in time and you're willing
Of
to.
course.
Fine.
Of course.
I just want to make it clear that they're not telling you to be unethical. Just
Yes.
telling you your strategy has to be clear in a way that you don't put yourself in a very difficult
In a
position.
bad situation. I mean, I loved my time at Airtel, a lot of people I work with, great organization, but this process is one that can be very uncertain again. Like I said, I went there with the confidence that I was going to get my visa like in hands. And we do this thing where we're so private and all of that. When you build relationships with good people, you're not trying to destroy the firm in any way by saying that, oh, I think it's time for me to further my education. And if you have a good boss, these are like conversations you can have with them to say that I think it's time for me to further my education. I want you to know that this is where I'm at. You also have to know that organizations will put themselves first before you. Sadly, it is just what it is. It's a going concern and they have to move on. But, and then in doing that, you then need to find a proper balance with it. I personally don't advise that you resign without having your visa in hand. It's too risky if that happens and then you go resign. It's a better option in terms of, not necessarily better for a lot of people. It's a better option when for some reason, like for me in my case, I couldn't meet up with the 2 months notice. I was an assistant manager, so I had to give 2 months notice. And I couldn't do that because I had a tight deadline for resuming August 4th. And I got my visa approved on July 27th, meaning my visa did not even come till the following Monday. This was on Thursday. My passport didn't come back to me on Monday. And I had to leave the US on Thursday that week. Leave Nigeria on Thursday that week. So there was no time to do that whole resignation thing as good or as proper as I would have wanted to do it. And I didn't know what the MBA system was going to look like in terms of being able to balance working properly with doing my studies as well. So at that point, I had to make a very huge decision. Was I going to resign and pay the 2 months in leave, which was really huge money as well, pay that and then go to school? And that seemed to be like the lesser of the evils, in my opinion. That was like the best thing I could do. Do I like it? No. Would I wanted to do like a proper handing over? Thankfully, I worked with somebody that I was really close with, so we're like on top of each other's work and knowing what to do, etc. All I had to do was give access to my laptop, show like where everything was, so that there wasn't like a point where the firm, like I was doing things and nobody had like view on it. And I think that's really the best you can do as a person as well. When you feel that there might be a possibility you are leaving or something like that, it's time to start thinking of the continuity. Like, are you putting things where people are seeing them so that they can know and things like that? Because you will ask for reference from these people at some point. So it's not your best interests to burn bridges and just like leave and think because you have let your organization will ask them for reference. Did you really work here? So keep that in mind.
Just to add to that, your decision from there can, disturb some of the progress you will make after your MBA, because you don't want to burn bridges in a way that when they're trying to do background check, a bad thing shows up. First, so let me quickly go to the question that I'm posting live. Tunde, can you see any question about I got into UNC without funding? Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'll let Tunde take a stab at that first, and then Victoria will jump on it. Let's just focus on the questions that these people are asking. We have about 5 or 6 questions in queue.
To be honest, I think it was Victoria that actually mentioned as well. Your story need to be, looked from like the holistic view, not just about one-dimensional view, right? You shouldn't just look at and think about, oh, the only reason why I'm choosing this school is because of funding, right? What are the other things that this school? That means you've done your due diligence about the one that you're actually choosing. What does that school has to offer? In the previous session that we did, that you mentioned about a specific school that was really good at, I think, finance and accounting, right? That was like the number one in accounting or finance. And, for those kind of school, you can say, oh, I chose this school because of this, and this is how it ties to what I'm trying to do post MBA. But, funding is just one of those, metrics as well. So for me, I would say that you should find the right balance between those three. Outside of the funding, what other things can you highlight that, UNC is good at? It could be that maybe you don't want to be in a big city or something, or it could be whatever that thing is. So I would say that outside of that, just look for some other things that you can add to that story to make it more believable, right? Because if you just say that it's just funny, that means if one other school that without any ranking, without any purpose, whatever, it gives you full funding, you also take that, right? That means you don't have a good, solid reason behind your choice, right? Money should not just be the only reason for you to take a school.
I agree. And a few more things that you can think about. Oh, this is a weather that I can cope in this school. Or I would have gone to that school, but I have so and so allergies. There are a lot of things that you
A
can.
lot of things.
Yeah. I'm gonna let Victoria jump in 60 seconds as well before we jump to the next question.
I think just echoing what Tania said, very important that you stay in tune with your story, because if you're very fickle about, oh, this school gave me more funding than I really want to go to UNC, but they not give me enough funding. You've indirectly told the visa officer that you're not even sure why you're coming to the US in the first place. But if you're really like, hinged on the fact that UNC is a great school for consulting, these are like the rankings of people that have gone to their employment stats and all of that stuff, and I see myself in that position, which is why I really, really want to go to UNC, irrespective of the fact that this other school is offering me. When you say that to the visa officer is more convinced to be like, okay, this person really knows what they want, knows the outcome that they are going in for. And it's sort of like, it doesn't mean they'll give you, it doesn't mean it's a yes, but it softens the effects. Something I heard very critical was, you are judged until, how do they say it? You're already proven guilty by the time you reach the front of the visa officer. Is when they give you the visa, then they now overturn that this person is not guilty. So it's like the otherwise. So you need to prove to them that you are not guilty of the fact that they are thinking you want to japa. You are guilty of the fact that you just want to go to school, expand your horizons and things like that. And these are like the key things that show them that you actually mean that.
Just to add to that, the burden is on you.
Yeah, to prove.
So the visa officer is trained to believe that you will not return. You are here to stay. The burden of proving otherwise is on you.
So you as a person.
I really love the way that Tunde and Victoria have answered that question. There's nothing else I can say to that. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot the next question, which would be this one. I think I'm more equipped to, just answer this one quickly. So this person says, sorry to deviate from the subject a little, for someone who has previously had an immigration petition filed for permanent immigration to the US, do you have any tips on how to navigate? Look, that's a red flag, right? That's a big red flag, because you've already shown that you want to come back to the US with that former whatever. Good luck on how you want to explain to them now that you just want to school and return, right? So that's what you should focus on now. That's how they're thinking about it. Every interview, they have some question hanging here. Will this
Yeah.
person return, right? Now you see that will this person return? There are a lot of other prongs, other tests that they will be testing, and everything is falling back to this question, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes they are gisting with you and chatting with you. You don't know what they are testing. That's why some of you think that, oh, they were really nice with me, they were gisting with me. Suddenly you just told me I'm denied. They are trained to do that. They are checking everything to see if you can focus, if you've taken a consulting interview before, you've prepared on how to case, you will know that, at times they give you a question, a prompt. That prompt, you will walk through many, many things just to come back and answer that main question. Okay, so ensure that you stay on that. And how you will prove to them, that's a really tough whatever, right? How you will prove to them that you will return, that's something you're going to have to work extra.
No, just to add to that, I do know somebody who was in this position during my class, and she actually did go to Duke eventually. And I saw this on her transcript when she sent it. They expressly mentioned to her that because she had not I think she didn't mention that someone had filed for her for immigrants petition and all of that. So the visa officer pointed it out that someone has filed for you for an immigrant petition before. And at that point, she was like, yeah, when she was much more younger. And of course, that doesn't play a role into her wanting to further in school and all of that. I think the two things that really helped her in that place was being cognizant of that fact and knowing how to address it, to say that, well, yes, they did file for me. I have family members, as I already put in my application before. But what's paramount to me at this point is that I'm going to business school to get the results that I need to get to further my career. And the good thing that helps was she was going to a good school as well. She wasn't going to a top 50 or 77th ranked school. She was going to school. So they knew that there had to have been some work that has been put in there to get her to that point. And there are some people that just know these things, but I think knowing how to navigate that story, being cognizant of the fact that this might be a question that can come up, and being ready to answer it is extremely important. Hers was a positive story. Who knows, with everything that is happening right now, it might be more negative, but I wouldn't say that should be the reason why you shouldn't try, at least.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I think for sure you should try. I think one of the other things is the timing.
Mm-hmm.
When was that filed? If you someone just tried to file a
2 years ago, and you want to go to business school, how?
There's a confusion at that point in time, right? You get me? The closeness, So if it's filed like a while ago, then you can say that in the last 10 years, motivation have changed. I've been in a better situation here in Nigeria. This is where I'm at. This is where my journey is taking me to, and I think that this is going to help me get there, right? You can, flip it. But if it's close side, like maybe last year, this year,
it's hard to sell.
Yeah.
The next question goes to Victoria straight. They even mentioned your name inside. While she's reading it, let me say as well that be original with your story. That's a very original story. While I was younger, they could make decisions for me. Now I'm older and, I've done all of this work to get to the next level. I don't think that, I deserve to be, again, how you communicate it will tell. So I'm going to let Vicky go ahead and answer that question if it's something she can jump on.
So the question is a bit worded weirdly, and I'm assuming it's the one that says, thanks, Victoria, for sharing your story. I can 100% relate with how you feel after your first attempt. Please, as for someone with full funding, do you mean no funding and there is no possibilities for additional funding from school? What would you suggest one change in your story? Because why are you changing anything if you have full funding?
I'm clear about this person. This person has full funding, but at times, again, it's about you preparing regardless of whatever you have. At times some people have full funding and they're very confident that nothing can go wrong. So I think I know who this person is. This person has full funding, and what this person is most likely asking is, now that I have full funding, there is no extra money I can ask for to change my situation. And let me quickly say something about when they say your situation has changed, so that you can see why the visa officers are doing that. Tunde is my colleague. He has rejected someone's visa. You come back to me it's hard enough that I have to overturn my guy's decision.
Yeah.
Hard enough. But if I have to overturn his decision, I must put a reason there. Now, this is what has changed. So that's the reason why. So I think they're even helping you when they tell you that what has changed,
Yes.
because now you are giving them justification to be able to overturn that decision that, okay, this has changed with this person, right? So ensure that when you're going back with anything, any story that has changed, it's a story that is worth putting on file. It's a story that is worth that visa officer going against their colleague.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you see it that way, you'll be able to tell a good story around what has changed.
Yeah.
I think my perspective on sorry, Vicky.
Yeah.
I think perspective on even what has changed shouldn't just be about maybe funding or like very like this.
Exactly what I was about to say.
If you look at it, the way I interpret that for me would be that for me to be able to answer that question, I need to understand what went wrong the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? So self-reflection is the one thing I'll tell you to do. Reflect on the first situation, the first time that you went there. What do you think went wrong? And
Yeah.
try to craft your what has changed based on that and address those concerns. The reason why they didn't give you that visa is because they have obviously, reservations on whatever it is, right? Address that head on, right? And if the reservation was based on the fact that they felt like you don't have the capacity to, for funding, that's where you can use funding scenario and say, hey, this now I have full funding. Before you thought that I couldn't, I don't have the finances or I couldn't get loans. That's why you could say funding. So you need to be able to understand what happened the first time for you to craft what has changed.
Yeah, just gonna echo that, and I think it was something Dai also like taught me during the time I was writing my that part of your DS 160 where they tell you what do you think, like why were you denied the visa the first time. This is where you craft a convincing story. Now in your case of you have full funding, to be honest, your problems are not as great as somebody else. You have to then think carefully, just like Tunde said, what exactly could be the reason. And a quick reason that comes to my head here is you were very nervous and you didn't have the opportunity to articulate your goals, plans to the visa officer at this point, and you feel that there was a possibility you might not have convinced them of your intentions to study in the US and to come back to your country. And I think that now you want to then say, I'm in a better position, state of mind to be able to tell you that story and articulate it better. But one thing I always recommend is that space, as big as it is, it's not just there for two lines. Fill it carefully, and write. My thinking is that they read it before you even get there for some weird reason. I don't know how they do that, but my thinking is they've seen it. So you want to put a story there to say that even if you have full funding, everything is correct. You want to come from a point of humility to say that at this point, my thinking is, and this is, if I remember clearly, this is what myself and Dio even worked on at that time, is there was a lot of people at this embassy, and we had very limited times to echo and convince the visa officer that this was why I wanted to come to school. My funding is sorted because I have 100% funding, so I don't have to bother about being able to fund myself, etc. I'm coming back to work in Nigeria, etc. And I didn't have the opportunity to convince the visa officers of all these factors. And now I'm in a better position to do that. And this is my story. And that's how you want to articulate to that person. Because if funding is not your issue, then probably they just tell you that we can't ascertain your immigration intent. We can't say that we know that you are coming to the US and we're going to go back. Another thing could also be the school you are going to, like it or not. They might see it as this person is going to 179th ranked school, and they're like, of course, those schools are fine to give you funding. But then if you're not even able to tell a good story, how, like, they can't reconcile both the school and all of that. So it's really your ability to just be able to say, understand exactly why you were denied in the first place, or come up with a good reason as to why you think you were denied, and be able to give changing points for that.
Yep. So before we go to the next question, let me add something to that. There's some of these things that I rather, talk about in our regular meetings. This webinar will be going live on our Instagram so that people can go back and watch. Now, some of the other reasons might be that, some of you have siblings or family in the US. gotta address that, because if you have ties in the US and you don't have ties in the home country, you can't blame the visa officer. You have to put yourself in the position of the visa officer to know what kind of stories will convince you. So put yourself in their shoes and think critically that, oh, okay, this person is coming to deceive me. So when you hear your own story, try as much as possible to deny yourself and find how that story can make sense to you. Some people think that, oh, you are in Nigeria, you now say, oh, you work with a multinational, blah, 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 blah. That's a red flag, because that multinational might have a presence in the US, and the fact that you have traction with them means that, okay, it's a tie for you on the other side. Your story must really be clear around how this brings you back to Nigeria, and how, or Africa, wherever you're joining from, and how that story can also resonate with the visa officer. I just want to be clear on that. And the fact that you have family is not the end of the world. You just need to be able to communicate clearly, structure, make it clear that this is what I'm doing. Oh, my family member is actually in DC. This is what this person is doing. However, I have a different goal. My school is in Los Angeles and I'm returning. I have this offer, I have that, I have this business back in Nigeria, or my wife is in Nigeria, I'm getting married once I return, whatever, anything. It has to tie you back to Africa, or Ghana, Kenya, all of you that are here. I'm gonna go ahead and take the next question. That was a good question. The next question is, do you have advice for people? Do you advise going back to Abuja for a third attempt after being rejected in Abuja for the first attempt? This person sounds like you've been in Abuja first, Lagos second, Abuja again. You are asking, well, go ahead. Again, don't focus on all this positional whatever. Focus on your strategy, your story. This series will continue to happen every weekend. We will bring someone for you every other weekend, and you will hear different stories. You will hear someone that was rejected 4 or 5 times before they finally got it. You will hear someone that has been rejected 2, 3 years in a row before they finally got it, right? At times, being consistent actually even shows that you really mean to do this, and this is something that is not just a means of running abroad for you. The next question will be, how does one go about congressional appeal? Is it fine to inform your admission coach or school visa official? Those guys have nothing to do with that process. Let me just quickly go through this one. They have nothing to do with that process. That's an individual process. And I think that you can join some of our sessions to figure that out, so I don't waste a lot of time here. Okay, so that's the question. I've already answered that one as well. Okay, so I have a sibling in Canada. Will they be aware? Do I need to tell them, you have nothing to do with Canada? Canada is not the United States, right? So, and don't forget, when they say family, they are only talking about your immediate family, siblings, father, mother, and maybe step siblings, right? Your cousin is not your family, your auntie, your uncle, they put that structure in there. All right, so I'm going to throw this out to Victoria and Tunde to take a jump at it as we try to round up. We'll round this up in another 8 minutes.
Which of them?
Oh, there's one of them talking about is a school cosign.
Oh,
I don't think it matters. The most important thing is for them to be able to see that you have the funding. And I don't even think questions come up. I don't know that I've seen anyone who had questions to say, did your school co-sign the loan, or did you get it from like a private company? The most important thing the visa officer is, can you fund the education, and how do you want to fund it and pay it back? So that's what I've seen in my experience. I don't know if Tunde has another perspective on that.
No, I think I totally agree. I think at the end of the day, do you have the funds to, to pay for your school fees and your living expenses while you're there, right? I've not heard any story as well that anybody went deep into say, oh, how do you know who is signing you or who is doing? But yeah, so I think it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. That has been answered. I have just 2 more questions. have a lot of text in them. I want to let both of you read first while I'm chatting something else. So we're going to have this session of telling our stories as much as possible. Try to do it every week. We have a lot of interesting stories coming. So please look out for these webinars. We're still going to have our sessions where we try to help you prepare. On our website, for example, if you sign up, you will be able to get access to an automated visa preparation tool, artificial intelligence acting as a visa officer and asking you questions and helping you prepare. So jump on there, sign up, and get access to it for free. We're still going to charge for it next week.
I could take like the first question on Vanderbilt. I guess this will sort of like be like a throwback question at you as well. What do you think has changed for you? If you're going with the same story, that's fine, to be honest. The thing is, how do you then tell that story differently than how you've already told it the first time? I remember I had to sort of like redo my I-20 during my own time to add more funds and do that, but you're already funding yourself 14K already, and your dad is covering the 36K. Do you intend to take any student loans? This might be where you sort of like consider doing that, because 36K is 36 million naira, if not more, in Nigerian terms right now. And no matter how much you want to say your dad is going to fund it and all of that, the question for them is, it still remains the same. On what basis would somebody just drop 36K for $36,000? It's huge money in their own heads, right? So if I think yeah, it's huge money for them. So my thinking would be, if you might probably want to consider thinking about like student loans at this point, and then still saying, okay, your family is funding some part, but that's what I would recommend. But if you don't intend to change anything, then you really just need to reiterate the story. But I don't encourage that at this point.
That's big money.
Plus 2000 to that, 36 grand. In the US,
Yeah.
nobody gives 36 grand to your even to their children.
Exactly.
Does this gonna be someone's, maybe retirement, averagely, an average American, that's a retirement savings. So from that perspective, they're also looking at it from that perspective, like, I can't even give my own child 36 grand. So who is your father that is giving 36 grand? And I need the only child,
Exactly.
so that's something. So for me, I think this story in itself is that the person did not believe the story that your father is going to give 36 grand. That's one, So the recommendation from Victoria makes sense. You could want to try other ways of maybe, splitting that up and getting a student loan or whatever it is. But you need to be able to articulate what has changed if in that. For this.
Wait, 1 second. Let me just add to that. And this story can work for you if your dad was like a senator in Nigeria or the MD of an oil company. But I can bet that the moment you mention this, they will ask, what does your father do? And then they will now weigh that in their head. Anybody that will be able to give you 36K should be working in a place that the visa officer can easily resonate that, okay, this is so bad. And those kind of things don't happen often, right? So I think that, I'll double down on what Tunde and Victoria has said. Go ahead and make your story believable. You also need to know that there's a difference in culture. The visa officer is not used to hearing that a parent is paying this much for school fees.
For school fees, yeah.
They are probably still paying back their own student loans, right?
Exactly.
In fact, many presidents in the US, would finish their loans in their second term in office or something like that. So loans are normal for them. It can be a strange thing to hear that, somebody is dropping this huge amount. Financially, it might not even make sense, right? Because it's better for you to leverage some debt than dropping all of this money ahead. So I think that is answered. The last question, please.
I could start off with this, and the question is, you messed up when you changed your school in your new attempt coming from Missouri scholarship. I think communication is extremely important here. And this is, I mean, I've been in the line and I've heard people do these interviews, and I'm wondering, how did you even get into this school in the first place? And which sort of brings me back to Daya's point earlier that there are people who have messed up the process so much that you're like, they somehow get into these schools, but you know that they have no business being in these schools. Now, if you change your school from you had zero funding and now you're going to a different school in terms of like that should be like an easy communication. And the reason why you're even having to communicate this in the first place is because something has changed about your I-20. You're no longer going to the school you wanted to go to before. And how you communicate that to your visa officer changes the whole game, because in that the change between one school and one school means you were not strongly tied to that school. Just what we said previously, you were not strongly tied to that school, and if you could suddenly change, there has to be a very good reason why you're changing. And now you're getting like full funding or like great scholarship. You need to be able to highlight that very quickly, and your DS 160 again, use that space effectively, right? For why you were denied the visa the first time. You did not go to that school as much as you loved that school. Things had to change, because when you look at the fact that another school was offering you funding with some other benefits, it was a better option to go with that school. And so that's how you want to go ahead to correct the perception. You need to be able to do the comparison to the visa officer for both schools at that point. And I think that might be helpful in your case. And I'm actually glad that you already connected with a lot of supportive people. You could use that to say that, well, this was also one of the reasons why you changed from the other school as well. You needed to see that representation and it wasn't available to you and things like that. I mean, that's my perspective on this. I don't know if Cindy and Daya have something else.
Nothing to add on my side. I think I agree with everything you said. Dio, if you have
I think on my side, I know this person. I already had a chat with this person. Nothing on my side. I think you hit it spot on. As we take the last question, guys, please
there are two questions. Maybe say after these two questions, we should just wrap it up, right?
Yeah, after the two questions were done. But in the meantime, please, guys, try to follow us up on our platforms on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and the rest. What I can do is take more of these questions via our DMs, and then we can get like a Victoria or someone to just do a short video, and then we can post it, but we have to go. Let me allow Tunde answer the first question, and then Victoria will answer the second question. Question, unfortunately, you're going to have to DM us.
So for the spouse one, right? Yourself and your spouse, got rejected. I think you both, if I understand correctly, you applied together and you got rejected. I think for me, I think that you said it the best, right? Put yourself in the shoes of the viewer, right? I want to believe that maybe that's your only tie there. That's your primary tie because now you're married, right? And you're trying to now move together. Then you're not showing that, hey, I'm coming back. So I think that's the primary, issue here for me. For people that I've seen that have come with their spouse, they've done it separately. One of them would first go for the F1 visa, get that. You go over, then the F2 visa comes in as a second option and say, hey, I'm going to visit my husband, and you do it, you sell it like I'm going in, I'm coming back. It's not like I'm going and moving. So I think that is what you can do in this case, is to split that application. Instead of you going together, you split it, get your own, secure your bag, go, then you can have your wife or your husband, in this case, I don't know if you're a man or woman, but to do that. I think that's the primary thing that I would advise in this one.
Yeah.
I agree as well. Quickly, something that has happened in the past is one person going for the F1 will now put on file and say, hey, look, I'm married and my wife might be coming in the future to visit me and things like that. She has a job in Nigeria. We're planning so and so and so, whatever. All right. Go ahead, Victoria.
This question is the last two questions actually, I feel like I want to even take the last one first. This is what we talked about earlier about dishonesty. By the time you lie about something on your application, it's so hard to overturn the person's mind. It's a trust-based system, right? So I would say you need to find time like specifically with Dial to sort of like think through this, especially I don't know, I'm just saying though, but is extremely important. But my thinking is you need a lot of thinking to know how to address this particular one. For the person about the variable interest loan, I think for this case, it's just communication that you need to be able to do. And you're going to have to explain that also your DS 160 to say that at the time when you were doing your first interview, there was a lot of nerves going around. So you were not able to explain properly a lot of things. And I think you should be the one leading with this explanation and not waiting for them to ask you about it. And it makes sense, or it makes sense for you to say that yes, you'll be using your savings. But my advice there would be you want to say that savings is going to cover your living expenses and also like the additional funding that you think you want to add. So my advice here would be that go, of course, with saying that your loan amount has increased, etc., and your personal funding is going to take the rest of the funding that is, but you just have to explain it clearly. And I would say lead with explanation rather than waiting for them to come back to ask you that what happens in the first time. Corporate sponsorships, I know nothing of those.
Thank you very much. Let me quickly say that this has been a great session. The best thing you can take away from here is put yourself in the shoes of a visa officer and listen to yourself. Okay? It's a trust-based system. It's better for them to deny you and you have a chance to apply again than for them to ban you for 10 years.
To ban you, exactly.
Misrepresentation. And the ripple effect of that is not just on yourself, it's having a ripple effect on others as well, because now it's harder to trust whatever other people are saying. So if all of us can really, really, decide to go there with your real truth, then, it might be easier. You see, my parting words would be, as Africans, we think that we need to have like a super fictional story to get a visa. So we keep going to people who are not smart enough to get into the MBA that you have gotten into to coach you just because they say they are visa agents or whatnot, right? Tell your real story. The originality of the story is what gets you the visa. It's not the perfection that you're trying to get. Visa officers are human beings. At times when you even bring your flaw to the front and let them know that this is what happened, life happened here, is relatable. They can tell when you're telling the truth. So I think that, go ahead and always be honest, tell the truth, let your story be original, and you will get it. Talking about corporate sponsorship, you need to be very careful about that as well, right? You need to be able to think about the fact that, oh, this company wants to give me, you want to go and say this company wants to give me 70% of my school fees just to come back and resume as so and so. And meanwhile, you work with the company for just a year and some months or two. It doesn't make any sense in the kind of economy we have in Africa now, right? So listen to your own story, check it properly that it makes sense before you go ahead and put it out. Go there and be original and tell the truth. Lastly, this person said, thanks, I have a signed letter from the company, but
Yeah.
I was skeptical because it's not a company these visa officers resonate with, like mentioned before. One last red flag I want to mention, please. As our culture, as Africans, it's not your fault, it's the way we communicate. When I want to tell you that, look, I have a list of questions that I have prepared for Victoria, I will say, oh, I have a list of questions I prepared for Victoria, right? Launching the paper without them asking. You got to think about that as well. They are watching your body language. You get there, they didn't ask you. You're saying, oh, I have funding from so and so. See, that's desperation. You get there on that day, you are standing out. You are the one that your makeup is shouting. Your suit is shining.
You're attacking me right now. On my face.
No,
You're attacking me on May 31st.
No. Come on, not you. I'm just saying, like, don't stand out. Don't take attention, right? Don't let them spot you before you get there, right? you know, you're an investment banker and that's how you dress every day. Yes, that makes sense, but don't do anything extra to put yourself under the spotlight, because they are, if I was a visa officer as well, why are you, dressing like it's your birthday, right?
Yeah.
It's an outlier for me.
And even it's additional pressure for you, right? Because you're not comfortable in that new,
Yeah.
Christmas club.
there.
Anyway, lastly, for those of you that have gotten your visas, or some of you that are still in this battle, I pray you get your visas. When you get your visas, you have to stay in touch with this community because stage by stage, we'll let you know what to do. Next, it might be how to get your internships. Next, it might be how to get around your green card. But let me say that we usually will host a lovely black tie dinner for the people that have been rejected their visas. I pray you don't have to attend, but if you're not going this year, it's usually a great place for you to just go and eat free food and connect with people that have the same type of stories. And that's also already growing your network, especially if you quit your job. You never know, right, how you get the next job. So stay in our community, follow us on Instagram, follow us on LinkedIn, and stay in touch for all of these great things that will happen. I will ensure that some of our team members will post the videos from last year, the black tie dinner we had for people that didn't get their visas. And some of them have already gotten their visas this year. So let it be fun all the way. Snap out of that depression. You are more than the rejection you have gotten. And
Yeah.
I will leave Tunde to give us his final note of advice, and also Victoria to leave us some words after Tunde.
Honestly, I think you said everybody has, that was spoken has said it all. The most important thing is stay true to yourself, own your story. Remember that whatever you put in can be taken out. So just make sure that you number one, if you're putting it in, whether it's true or false, own it, right? Wish you all the best. Remember that this community is there for a reason. If there's anything throughout the journey from, like Dayo said, from the beginning, when you're even just thinking or trying to figure out to navigate the process to getting into the program, post MBA, right in your respective jobs, it's a hand-to-hand platform, right? So leverage this community very well. Wish you all the best.
I wish you guys the best. It's a process. It's not a one-man race. I would say be open with asking for help as well. This process is not one for the most part that you can do all by yourself. There are people who have gone through it. You learn from experience. And so you should be willing to ask questions, ask intelligent questions, and be very genuine and authentic about yourself, your motivations, and the things you really want to achieve. I think that helps a lot in the process. I wish you all the best in the process. Hopefully get to see you guys here soon.
Yep. Bye, people.
Take care.
And don't be shy to attend our black tie dinner if you are still in Nigeria. We love you. We want to ensure that we stay engaged.
Yeah.
Sunday, you are enjoying our music, eh?
We still have about 24 people that are still enjoying the music as well. So great